Put your hands together. Please welcome on stage Ben Fischler. He's the Industry Marketing Manager, Media and Entertainment, Autodesk, and he'll be speaking on the future of media and entertainment.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Before I begin, I just want to say this is my first time in India, and I absolutely love it. I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate the welcome that everyone has given me. So before I get to the fun stuff, I want to mention that I will be making some forward-looking statements, so please don't use any of the material in the presentation for investment or purchasing decisions. So on to the good stuff. So actually, Haresh and Bhupesh both mentioned that there's three factors that we're really focused on. It's more, better, with less. And these same factors are actually impacting media entertainment world in a huge way. And I would say that probably the single biggest factor is more, right? And that's really driven by the devices that we're all carrying around with ourselves today, smartphones. Because now we have billions of new content consumers who want entertainment, and they want entertainment whenever they're doing whatever they're doing at any time. And so for the creators, all of the visual storytellers around the world, and the studios, the individuals who are making content, there's huge demand. It's insatiable. And so there's a lot more that we need to create. And we also want it to be better. The expectations for the quality of the content has gone up. And actually on screen here, I've got 4 films, and I'm going to ask you, they all have something in common. They were all nominated for Best Visual Effects Oscars last year. They have another thing in common as well. Our software played a critical role in creating these visual stories on screen. And we continue to push the envelope to provide the best workflows and the best content creation tools for visual storytellers around the globe. And we take pride in being really the professional standard for making content. Now, content is becoming, or really has been globalized for quite a while, whether it's Bollywood, Hollywood, Nollywood now. Everywhere around the world, people are telling stories visually, and they're doing it at an unprecedented scale. People, again, they want more content, and they want it across all these different devices. So it's feature films, for sure. The film industry around the world is bigger than ever, but it's also video games, as well as streaming content. And streaming is probably one of the single biggest drivers for demand right now. One of the things we're also seeing is that filmmakers and visual storytellers are starting to explore new ways of storytelling. They're changing things up. So Bandersnatch was a Netflix series where the viewer could actually choose out of 5 different outcomes. So you and your friends could potentially see a completely different ending to the story. And this is an interesting example of how the old paradigms for storytelling are starting to change and break down, and we're seeing new and interesting ways of exploring storytelling. And we're going to see more of this. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for what's coming up. This also, of course, means that there's more, the volume of work is going up. And again, that ties back into more. So in addition to the traditional media types like film and television, real time is now one of the big drivers for new types of content. It's an interesting thing to think about that these devices that we're carrying around with us, our smartphones, the generation that's coming up, they will be completely comfortable with things like augmented reality experiences, right? My kids right now are already exploring augmented reality with their smartphones. And if you think about it, that's not going to change. It's only going to increase. So the technologies are starting to advance new types of content, and then demand is going with it. Virtual reality, same thing there. The cost of the devices is coming down, and the comfort level of the consumers is going up. And so consumer demand is going to continue to increase there as well. So this boom is not going to stop. Gaming is another area where more is probably the defining theme. So in the same way that streaming with Netflix, with music like Spotify, streaming has been a huge engine, we're about to see a huge wave in gaming. So all of the major players in gaming, whether it's Microsoft, Sony, now Google, they all have major streaming initiatives underway. And what that means is that the gaming worlds that you play in will be potentially unlimited. So there won't be just a finite world that you run into a wall at the end. There will be no walls. You'll just be able to keep on going. And so the worlds will get bigger and richer. The better part with gaming also ties into technologies like ray tracing. So this allows a level of visual richness and complexity that is going to be incredible. So your games are going to look more and more like films. Another interesting thing is that workflows that were traditionally the domain of media entertainment are moving more and more into other industries. So manufacturing, AEC, they're all adopting workflows that really traditionally have been part of media entertainment. And this is really driven by the demand, again, for visual richness, really compelling visuals, allowing creative agencies to produce better, more compelling work for their clients. And so this is sort of a nice synchronicity between media entertainment, AEC, and manufacturing. So now I want to dive into some of our product updates with the M&E division. We've been talking a lot about film and TV, so I'm going to start up with Maya. So as someone who spent, I think, half of my working career as a production artist, I know very intimately the realities of what it's like to work in an application like Maya. So the viewport is basically where you spend your working life. And so it's of the utmost importance for us to get it right. A great viewport allows the artist to focus and produce better work. And that means a better outcome for their projects and their customers. Things that we've been doing in the viewport are basically getting a result in the viewport that matches what you're going to get out of your final render, which means that you're not having to do more and more iterations, and you have an expected result right there in the viewport. Another example, and this does tie into the viewport as well, is animation playback with the animation cache tool. And what this really is all about is about productivity for animators. The more an animator can iterate, the better their work's going to be, the more versions they can produce, the better they get, the closer they get, rather, to that final result. The director says yes, goes out the door, and the clients are happy. So with cache playback, we're seeing incredible performance results. Shots that were running at maybe 2 FPS, they're running at 10x that now. So if an animator can produce 10 more versions, then the result is going to be that much better, and they can move on to their next shot, and everyone is happy in the end. I'm particularly excited today to talk about Bifrost. So Bifrost for Maya has been released. We released it just recently at SIGGRAPH. And the best way to think about Bifrost is in a sense, it's similar to Dynamo, where it's a visual programming environment that's specifically built for media entertainment content creation. And while it's particularly good at creating things like special effects, so volumetrics, smoke, fire, explosions, it also includes several solvers that allow you to do even more complex effects that combine things like snow and dust. But that's just sort of the surface level. What I think is the most interesting about it is because it's an open system, an open visual programming tool, really it's up to the user to decide what they want to build with it. There's really no limit. And what we're seeing already, just in the first few weeks of it being in the hands of users, is that people are building incredible things. They're doing things with it that we didn't even know were possible. So it's an incredible tool, and it really allows kind of a whole new level of exploration for technical artists in particular. One thing also to mention about it is that you can bundle the compounds and the graphs that you build in Bifrost, essentially, and turn them into prepackaged effects that you can hand over to other people on your team. So you can have one person who works out the details of the effect, they can bundle it, and then pass it around to anyone on the team and allow those people to either use it as is or they can edit it however they like. The level of power and sophistication with the work that you can do in Bifrost is really incredible. Another thing that's interesting with Bifrost is that it also comes with essentially a headless node. So simulations are very complex, and typically you're going to not run the simulation on your local machine. You may want to offload it onto other machines on the network. So with a single seat of Maya, you have access to 3 Bifrost compute nodes, and with the collection, you have access to 15 nodes. So this means you're going to be able to scale up your processing power significantly, use resources that you may have on your network to run your simulations across the network. So definitely a lot of power and versatility with Bifrost. Another thing, and this is hot off the press, is that Bifrost for 3ds Max is now in beta. And again, we're already seeing some pretty exciting things. What's particularly cool to me is that with Bifrost, both in Maya and in Max, we're seeing some interesting workflows where people are using Bifrost with both Maya and Max together to pass data between the two applications. And again, we're seeing things even in the beta that we weren't even expecting people to be able to do with the tools. So it's really cool to see. Speaking of Max, let's dive in a little bit deeper with 3ds Max. Here again, the viewport is of the utmost importance. This is where the artist spends most of their working life. And here again, we're really focused on trying to make sure that the results you see in the viewport are going to match what you get from your final renders. We don't want there to be surprises. We want you to see something in the viewport, and then when you produce your final render, it looks exactly what you expect. So we're doing things like improving our support for OSL shaders, making sure that the physically based rendering in the viewport plays well with what you get from the final render as well. Here again, this is a good example of what you see in the viewport translating into what you get from the final render. I can tell you again, there's nothing worse than being surprised by something in the render that doesn't look like what you were seeing in the application. So we really want to tighten that relationship up so that you are getting beautiful results in the application and in your final render as well. So one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is what's coming up ahead. So we're starting to see machine learning and AI in our R&D efforts. And one of the areas that we're looking at right now is automating processes that are particularly tedious for artists. So UV work, so UVs are kind of the how you wrap textures around your geometry. This has traditionally been something that I can't say a lot of people like doing, but it has to be done. But it's also a great application for machine learning, and this is something that we're working on now to kind of automate the UV process so that the artist is sort of just there to guide, and we let the system do the heavy lifting. Another area that we're looking at and working hard on is integration of USD with 3ds Max. So USD is Universal Scene Description. It's an open source standard. And we're very excited to get that working with Max. This is something that we're actively working on now. And this is definitely going to be a help for integration into pipelines that are USD-based, as well as things like layout, etc. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about Arnold. So Arnold is our film quality renderer. We released version 5.4 recently at SIGGRAPH. We've seen some incredible performance improvements on the GPU beta. But we also introduced some cool things like a new clip Geo Shader. And what this lets you do is, in the render, so this is not actually using geometry, you can actually slice through objects. So I think this is going to be really, really cool for producing visualizations and things like that. It's kind of wild the amount of applications that this one shader, I think, has. Next up, I want to talk about Flame. So Flame has got some incredible new features that we released in the last release, actually I think over the last 2 releases, and this is a great example of where AI and machine learning really can be brought to bear to help the artist focus on the things that really kind of plus out and improve the work. So things like tracking of mats and creating depth mats and things like that. These are things that were tasks that were traditionally very tedious, but they're perfect for machine learning applications. And these are in Flame now in the shipping product. Next, I want to talk about our recent update to Shotgun. So Shotgun, of course, is our production management tool. And one of the areas that we recognized we needed to work on was making Shotgun really play well for artists. It did well with producers, production managers on the production side, but it wasn't really tuned to the needs of artists. So we introduced Shotgun Create, which is specifically built for artists and gives them kind of a home in Shotgun where they can focus on just the things that they need, the information they need, nothing else. Get in, get out, get back to producing great content, great work. So this is an interesting new effort that we've been involved with. We're one of the founding supporters of the Academy Software Foundation. And really what this is about is working closely with the industry to support open industry standards that integrate into our products as well as our competitors. And this is really about making sure that our customers don't have to rebuild the wheel every time. They want to focus on producing great content. They want to know that there are rock solid, dependable standards. And so we felt it was super important for us to get behind the Academy Software Foundation to support these open standards. So things like Material X, USD, these are becoming the bedrock standards of production, and we want to make sure that we support this effort 100%. In the same vein, we recently joined the Kronos Group, and here again, these are standards that are intrinsic to 3D on the web, as well as richer experiences for mobile platforms, XR, etc. GLTF is probably one of the better known standards that the Kronos Group is supporting. And here again, it's about making sure that these standards become industry adopted and have our complete support. And we definitely look forward to supporting this group going forward. Just to quickly recap, we talked a little about empowering creators, right? There's more demand than ever. Content creators are under pressure to create more, and they need to also create the best work they can. We talked a little bit about our DCC updates on our M&E collection, M&E products, and also I wrapped up with the support that we're giving to open standards of the industry. And that's it. Thank you so much for having me, and have a great AU today.